Hello, guys. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Weekly Blitz. My name is Joel Moran. My co-host Jackson McIntyre is here today, and we are going to talk about football. And what we're going to talk about is divisional round playoff predictions, but also give you guys a wild card recap. We weren't able to record this earlier in the week because Jackson lives in LA, where the fires were happening, and yeah, you know how that goes. Jackson, nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Good to be here and comfortable without the threat of everything around me burning down. So, yeah, good to step out of that one.
Now, there's a lot of talk about because we didn't give a little wild card recap. We kind of got to do it on this episode, and I just want to ask you what stood out to you the most from wild card weekend.
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway was not just Darnold, but the Rams defense. I think that game was the biggest shocker to everyone. Um, I don't think that people really expected Darnold's complete meltdown that began in the Detroit Week 18 game to carry over, but it was bad, and the Vikings' offensive line was bad. The Rams' coverage surprisingly held up decently well. There was a lot of reps, and there was a number of those sacks where no one was open. And Darnold had nowhere to go with the ball. Offensive linemen were beaten, and he went down. But there were also a lot of plays where he held on to the ball or was just wildly inaccurate. And it felt kind of like he regressed back into that Jets version of Darnold under pressure where he's seeing ghosts and feeling defenders that aren't there. And I think that the main takeaway there is it's JJ McCarthy time in Minnesota. I don't think you can sell anyone really on keeping Darnold in Minnesota this year. If McCarthy was a non-factor, I do think that they would probably still re-sign Darnold on more of that Baker Mayfield deal than the $45-50 million deal he was potentially looking at. But this level of meltdown, I don't know if I've ever seen this significant regression hit this fast. And I tweeted that out a few days ago. Someone mentioned Carson Wentz, which is fair. Wentz fell off the face of the earth very quickly, but that was like a end of season to the next season thing. This was like a Darnold's dominating, Darnold's dominating, next week Darnold's dominating, and then the next week he's just a piece of shit. Like he was so bad. It was it was like he couldn't hit a barn. He was missing everything. All those big time throws disappeared while the turnover worthy plays increased. There was a number of receivers running open deep. Some he just didn't see. Others he missed. Naylor, Addison both had chances, separation deep. Both were missed. And I think that and compounded by the Rams defense, who in the regular season, the Rams here, let me just pull this up. They were 28th, or they had the 28th worst EPA against the pass, and they were 17th in EPA against the rush. And contrast that to week one of the playoffs, and it was a completely different story. The Rams defense was second in EPA, team defense, in the first week of the NFL playoffs. And to step up in a moment like that, their defensive line was phenomenal. Olive Fisk versus Byron Young. They were getting pressure. Cam Robinson was a disaster. Blake Brandel, left guard, he needs to go. It's the Vikings have a complete overhaul to do on the interior of their offensive line, but the hope for the Rams going forward is that this defense can hold up, and they're going to need to going against Philly. That regular season game, Saquon ran for, what was it, like 250 or something like that?
300 total yards of rushing.
Yeah. So I mean that's a tall task. I think that Philly's going to take that. We'll talk more on that later, but. I mean, the hope here is that they keep this going, and maybe we see like kind of a Kansas City-esque transition where the regular season defense is not the best, and I'm talking about past years where Kansas City's regular season defense has not been there, and then they step up in playoffs. But Stafford was incredible. The Rams were great. Yeah. What about you?
Stafford was so good at releasing the ball quickly against those blitz looks when he was under pressure. He was just slinging it real quick,
Yep.
easy completions, just punishing the Vikings defense. I can't remember a meltdown this bad. You know, we were talking about Sam Darnold maybe being the long-term answer for the Vikings. And I think some people brought up a good point on Twitter after the game where, Darnold this year has had one of the longest time to throws. And dating back to his time with the Jets, he's always been a quarterback that has struggled with those short concepts. And we just saw two defenses back to back kind of take away those deep, big time throws down the field. And Sam Darnold wasn't able to be accurate in the short and intermediate areas of the field. And I think because of how well the Vikings played down the stretch of the season, outside of the last game of the season, we had some optimism for how they could look in the playoffs. But our gut instinct, our hunch back to when Christian Darrisaw got hurt was right. You lose Darrisaw, your offensive line doesn't have that fortified guy that can protect Sam Darnold's blind side. And Cam Robinson was worked in this game. And
12 pressures.
the interior of the offensive line we know is not good, but Cam Robinson was such a major liability. And when Christian Darrisaw was lost for the season, we kind of said it's going to be really difficult to win a playoff game when you can't trust your protection. And down the stretch of the season, they did a good job masking that, but it popped up in the playoffs. And this is why you need a complete team. You need a team that is good in the trenches to win playoff games. My biggest takeaway from the wild card weekend was that the best performances were from teams that had better offensive infrastructure. We saw Sam Darnold's meltdown. We can attribute that to the offensive line. And also, I didn't think KOC's plan was that good at trying to protect Darnold and keep him upright. And that led to him just having a roller coaster of a day and just missing all his passes because he just didn't trust what was going on around him. Justin Herbert with the Chargers, he had an awful performance, but he also had no receivers that can help him out at all. And that was exposed. Ladd McConkey is the only guy he can trust, but outside of that, nobody else he can target, he can actually trust. Because you look at the interception he had at Quentin Johnson where he threw across his body. You probably shouldn't throw across your body, but if that's T. Higgins, do I think that's an interception? I don't. I think T. Higgins fights for it a little bit better. But outside of that, the pick six, I don't think really was that much of his fault. The ball had a lot of heat on it, but it was it was catchable, and it was unlucky that it just went right into a defender's hands. The third interception, clearly not his fault. And the fourth one, you're already down by a lot. You're throwing it up, and it's underthrown a little bit, but Stingley also makes a great play on it. So, the best quarterback performances were by the teams that had the best infrastructure. And all the time we talk about how playoffs are make and break for players, but the players have to have that infrastructure around them. And Jordan Love struggled, and you can say that he was a little bit off because there were some throws that he should have hit, but the protection around him wasn't the best. The receivers around him, their separation wasn't the best. And LaFleur leaned into the run a lot. And I don't know, LaFleur as a whole has he's just leaned in all into the run first approach. And I think that hurt the Packers offense in this past season.
Yeah, and going back to the Chargers real quick, Herbert definitely a bad performance and the worst time to have it, and he has not shown that he can step up in those big games yet. That doesn't mean that he won't. There've been a number of quarterbacks in the past who struggled early in their playoff careers and then started piecing it together as their careers went on. Peyton Manning gets a shout out there, but Will Dissly, two absolutely crucial drops all season. He's been dropping crucial plays. Obviously, there was the interception where it hits him and he just plops it up in the air right into the defender's hands. But there was another one earlier in the game in the first quarter on 2nd and 19 for what probably would have been a first down. Dot from Herbert to Dissly, and it's just dropped perfectly in stride, not tight coverage. I mean, it was rough. I also want to ask you is staying on theme here, but away from the Chargers onto the Texans. Do you think that Nico Collins is wide receiver 3 in the league?
The third best wide receiver in the NFL. Number 1 is Jefferson. Number 2 is Jamar Chase.
1 and 2, I think, are stapled. Yeah.
But I will say, Justin Jefferson the last 2 weeks, he's gotten doubled, but he's just been taking out the game.
It's also Darnold. Yeah. Darnold just has not been able to hit anything.
Number 3, It's really between CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nakua, AJ Brown, Nico Collins. I think the third best wide receiver to me would be AJ Brown, just because of the physical
Yeah.
profile that he has. And you look at the amount of yards he has on this year and the receptions. It's like absurd that he has that many yards on the little amount of receptions that he does have.
Yeah, I'm not going to die on a Nico Collins wide receiver 3 hill, and I think that AJ Brown is definitely probably right now ahead, despite the fact that in that Eagles offense they don't really
And
throw the
Nico's in
ball.
a
But
conversation.
yes, and
Yes.
my hot take here is that I think next year I think Nico's going to establish himself as a top 3 receiver. I what he was doing last week was just phenomenal, and what he's done all season when he's been healthy has been outrageous. But yeah, I definitely think talent wise he's there, and I think next year will be the big year for him.
My last takeaway from our call weekend is I think Jayden Daniels is a special quarterback.
Yeah.
Winning a playoff game on the road, first playoff win for the Commanders since 2005. I'm kind of getting a feeling that maybe he could do it to the Lions too. Their defense is pretty vulnerable right now. I have the Lions winning that game. Spoiler alert: we're going to get into our predictions later on in the show, but still, like Jayden Daniels is proving to be like one of the few quarterbacks that you want to build a franchise around. I think when you name the quarterbacks that you want to build a franchise around, you go Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. After that, Jayden Daniels, CJ Stroud,
I
Caleb
think you got to
Williams,
go
Drake May.
Over Daniels over Stroud right now,
Yeah,
I think.
Jordan Love. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I on Jayden Daniels, I think he did 3 things really really well that were veteran-esque that are needle movers, and I those 3 things were throwing under pressure. There was the touchdown to McLaurin on 4th and 2 off his back foot with pressure in his face. He hit receivers. He hit receivers in stride over the middle of the field all game. Jared Goff-esque, where when you hit them in stride, they catch and go, and it helps aid yak. That huge thing for a quarterback, especially in the modern era of the passing game. And also, he identifies coverages before the play, and these things are obviously like hitting in stride. That's something you see, but like throwing with pressure is also something you see. But identifying coverages before plays, changing the play. There was the on the first quarter throw to Terry McLaurin downfield where he dropped a dot in or diamond over the top, lofted it in stride, beat coverage, but he identified man to the boundary. It was a fire zone, cover 3. He saw the 5th rusher. He called it out. He stepped up to the line, adjusted the protection in front of him, and just looked it off, threw it deep, and it was to a man corner because it was covered. It was fire zone cover 3, but the corner playing Terry McLaurin was in a man coverage type technique. So he identified that, knew what he had, knew who was coming, fixed the pressure or fixed the protection, and dropped a dime. And that was awesome to see. And I mean, the receivers aren't. Nothing about the team is really that good right now. Like like McLaurin's good, but he doesn't have a deep bag of weapons. His offensive line is fine. His defense is bad.
Running
But
backs inefficient right now.
running backs inefficient and the run game's inefficient, both of
Yeah.
them. So yeah, I mean I think that he's been a massive addition to this team, and I think you in playoffs right now, like you can't count them out because if he drops a masterclass, if the defense lucks into a couple turnovers and they win the turnover battle, that would be the blueprint for beating Detroit.
They had 35 minutes time of possession against the Bucks, and that's because they're just peppering the Bucks defense down the field and just working that clock methodically. Jayden Daniels has an advantage over these other quarterbacks because not only is he great in the pocket, and all the weaknesses that he had coming out of college that we thought were weaknesses have not been. He can throw to the middle of the field. He's ripping those digs. He is avoiding those sacks. He is navigating the pocket well. He can pass the ball at a very high level. He can win within the pocket. But then he has a dynamic that CJ Stroud, that Jordan Love does not have. He can scramble and he can be dangerous. Like, he's one of the most dangerous runners in open space in the NFL. He can make guys miss. Look at what he did against Kalijah Cansey. And that's a big dude. And you just shrug him off.
Athletic too.
Yes,
Yeah.
you fight for that first down. Like, man, he just plays with so much heart, so much toughness. And Jayden Daniels is special. Like, I think this is just his rookie year, and people are going to call recency bias, but what he's showcasing right now, like leading a top five offense, being top five in QBR as a rookie quarterback. Not even CJ Stroud was in that trajectory. CJ Stroud had a phenomenal rookie season. The Texans offense wasn't top 10. It was like, middle of the pack, a little bit of above average. Like Jayden is leading one of the very best offenses in the NFL. And that's just something that like cannot be overlooked with what he's doing. So yeah, I think Jayden is special. And Dan Quinn has the utmost confidence in him. They went for it on fourth down 5 times. That
Yeah.
you don't do that unless you really trust your quarterback to convert in those moments.
I'm surprised that Kliff Kingsbury has not been in more head coaching talks with the job that he's done here. We know that he's hit some walls in the past with his offense, but a full season of this, a playoff win, and some of these names that we're seeing in the coaching circles. I mean, Pete Carroll, even Mike McCarthy, who has had a good offense in the past, but these guys are getting these, they're kind of has-beens where it's been a little while since we've seen them really cooking something up, and we're ignoring the present. We're ignoring that Kliff has modernized his scheme, made tweaks to it to make it far more effective, developed Jayden into one of the best rookie quarterbacks in recent memory, and he's not really getting a lot of head coaching attention, and I that's shocking to me.
If you're the Bears, Mike McCarthy or Kliff Kingsbury?
Kliff Kingsbury. I mean, what he's done this year, it's the same task. It's obviously you don't have the same running threat with which Kliff has always preferred. But you, what is the faith you have in McCarthy to develop Caleb over Kliff, who's just done that? And he makes the game easy. He's very methodical with his reads and with his options, and it's 1, 2, 3. With Jayden, it's 1, 2, go. Sometimes 1, 2, 3, go. With Caleb, it would be 1, 2, 3. But in terms of if reading options,
Yeah.
but it's quick. It's quick, and it's yeah. I think that I wouldn't even really think about that, and don't even get me started on like Pete Carroll. Like I don't know where that name is coming from right now.
Mike McCarthy has had these 12 win seasons, and the Cowboys have had a top offense. But you look at the
Yeah.
Cowboys offense just from a design approach, and it's very simplistic, and it's the reason why against better teams they usually get stifled because there's little to no
Hmm.
creativity. We're begging for him to utilize the weapons a little bit more so last year, not this past season. And you kind of maybe get a little bit of flashbacks if like he goes to the Bears and you're watching the all 22 with McCarthy and the Bears and Caleb, and the offense looks again simplistic and very simple and very bland. And Caleb is once again in this situation that he not like last season, not like this past season, but maybe another situation that's not the very best. I know the allure, he's a veteran coach and he's won a lot, and maybe he brings some stability to the Bears. But I don't know. I think it's very risky, and it it's just one of those things where like I don't trust the Bears to make the right decision. The franchise has been so bad for a long time. Like even if they hire a great head coach candidate like Ben Johnson, I don't know. I still don't have much faith for that franchise to like figure things out right now, just where it is.
Yeah, and then another thing too on the McCarthy train or McCarthy topic is and Cowboys just in general right now, but they when McCarthy hired Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator, we saw that offense. That was Kellen Moore's offense. That was not Mike McCarthy's offense. Kellen Moore fell out of favor in Dallas and then went to was it straight to Philly or
Chargers.
Chargers, right? And then Philly, and where he has been mostly criticized. It's not the offense works from talent, and it's very easy to just inside zone, outside zone it up the middle, outside with these man movers of an offensive line. The passing game has not been working, and not only that, but now Kellen Moore is also getting Cowboy job interviews. So like none of it makes sense. The Cowboys also fired Mike McCarthy after their window closed to interview current coordinators like Ben Johnson. So it's nothing about what the Cowboys are doing is making sense. But just also like the McCarthy thing, that was Kellen Mond's offense. I don't know like what really like when is the last time that Mike McCarthy has called all the plays at a high level?
It's a very long time. It's like dating back to
Yep.
Green Bay and not even that
Yeah,
later
or
the later
early.
years. Yes.
I think he was early with the Cowboys.
And
Um,
it's been about a decade, but I did think he did some good stuff last year. I have this interesting stat for you, and I want you to try to guess it to see if
yeah.
you can. How many yards rushing do you think Jordan Love had this year?
Ooh. Um, I'll guesstimate about 12 a game. Would he play 15 games?
Y-
14?
Yeah, 15.
15. So like, what's that? 120, about 180.
He had 83 rushing yards total this
Oh,
year.
wow. Yeah.
And that is shocking to me. I heard Mina Combs talk about it. And I wanted to mention it too because it's like Jordan Love this year didn't take a step forward, and I think there's a multitude of reasons for that. The ones that are specific to him, accuracy, mechanics, footwork, kind of sometimes can get besides him. He trusts his arm a little bit too much, and he makes those risky throws.
He stays on the vertical read too
Yeah,
long and he doesn't work. You're supposed to go top bottom in that offense and he kind of goes top 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 and then bottom.
yeah, and then it's also you're not threatening any defenses with your legs. Against the Eagles, there was a moment where he escaped the pocket and he had this like wide open rushing lane, and he decided to just throw it backwards to
Mhm.
I think it was the tight end or the running back, and it just fell incomplete. And it's just like, man, just go and pick up the first down, go use your legs. And Jordan Love is mobile. It's not like he's not mobile. He's a mobile quarterback, and I feel like he can threaten defenses more with his mobility. And I think that is a step that he has to take forward. Like last year, his breakout year, his first year as a starter, he had over 200 yards rushing. So
Mhm.
it's not like he wasn't capable of scrambling, but this year he just didn't do it at all. And you could blame it on the injury, but Jordan Love regressed in areas this year, and you want him to pick it up. And is the answer signing an alpha wide receiver? Possibly. I
It's
think
part of
Jordan
it.
Love, yeah, it is part of it. I also think that Jordan Love needs to be better and Matt LaFleur needs to be better. I
Yeah.
saw this stat that the Packers this year, their pass rate was like 29th or 30th in the NFL. Last year it
Yeah.
was 19th. So, you
Yeah.
go from being a more so a pass happy team to being to rushing like 50% of the time, so I don't
Yeah.
think that helped Jordan Love either.
And something too with that is I think they leaned too hard into the we signed Josh Jacobs, we're gonna run him to death side of the equation here. And Jacobs is regularly mentioned with Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley as like the kind of running back free agent resurgence. And Jacobs had some big games. He had some big runs, but he was not high at all in rush EPA per rush. Whereas Saquon and Derrick Henry were either 1 and 2 or they were both in the top three. And I believe Jacobs was like 28 or something like that. So they weren't getting that same bang for your buck rushing the ball that the Eagles and the Ravens were. I don't know what happened with their offensive line, which was good all season, but it was a complete disaster. Especially Elgton Jenkins. Even Zach Tom didn't play well, but Elgton Jenkins had a 0.0 pass blocking grade from PFF.
He's
Which
regressed this year.
uh,
Bad.
Jordan Love was 3 for 11 for 58 yards and three interceptions on throws over 10 yards. Um, I do want to shout out one play I tweeted about. I texted you about this one too. Zach Bond. Um, Obviously, they lost N'Kobe Dean, but they were there was a rep. It was a Quinyon Mitchell interception where they were playing cover three from too high, of course, because that's what Fangio does. And in cover three and the Fangio system, the linebackers need to they creep up initially, and then right once the pass is determined, they drop back, they get depth, and they turn around and they look for crossers. Zach Bond identified a crosser, and that was Bo Melton. 4.34 40-yard dash time at the combine. And Zach Bond, inside linebacker, ran 50, 60 yards downfield, stride for stride with him. Um, Maybe a little bit of interference at the very end. It wasn't called. It was an interception, but the fact that you have linebackers that are able to run stride for stride, and Zach Bond's not a 4.3 speed guy, but he was able to run stride for him. And sometimes that's the football speed thing where it's not all just 40-yard dash times, but that is what we saw all year. Um, Plus Nakobe Dean, who did that as well. But Zach Bond doing that was incredibly impressive. And it's going to hurt only having one guy now that can do that.
Yeah, I like that you talked about Zach Bond because I think this segues perfectly into just talking about the Eagles defense, and we
Yep.
can kind of coincide that with how they match up with the Rams and our prediction for that game. Um, I don't have any faith in the Rams beating the Eagles. I think the
Yeah.
Eagles are too talented. I know there's going to be people out there that say the Rams have the better quarterback, they have the better coach. You can go and you can win any game, but the Rams defense did a lot of heavy lifting against the Vikings,
Yeah.
and their defensive line will not be able to get that same pressure against the Eagles. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
offensive line is so damn good. And then defensively, like last time when these teams faced, Matt Stafford was overwhelmed. I mean, Milton Williams dominated the game. Jalen
Yep.
Carter was getting double, triple teamed at times. Josh Sweat, we've been talking about him all season long, and he's been good. But man, Nolan Smith is like breaking out in front
He
of our
is.
eyes into
Yeah.
just like not a rotational pass rusher, but he's breaking out into a fantastic run defender. He's rushing the pass at an elite level. He has elite speed and bend around the edge, and it's really a lot for offensive tackles to handle. Zach Tom is one of the better ones in the league, and Nolan Smith dominated that matchup. So I look at how the Eagles match up with the Rams. I think they're too good. I think they're too talented. I think they're way better up front. I have a very tough time seeing how the Rams win this game.
I'm right there with you. I think that the Eagles are strong favorites, but I do think there's a blueprint. I think that the Eagles lose. Eagles were second in coverage in EPA in the regular season. That was with, I said all season here on this podcast, that the glue of this defense, obviously they've got the great corners outside, the good safeties, the great D-line, but the glue was the two linebackers, Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean, being able to erase everything underneath and pass off crossers with ease. Like they played on a string all season. They knew who was exactly where, as soon as the leverage bent one way, the other linebacker was coming off, exchanging it, taking the next assignment. And Dean is out now. I think it was a patella tendon, and
Oren
that
Burks
hurts a
time.
lot. And and against the Rams, that's one of the worst teams to lose a linebacker against because the Rams love to attack the middle of the field. Sean McVay's system is like crossers, middle of the field, 15 to 20-yard intermediate depth, all game long. And you don't have Dean anymore to take that away. And so the middle of the field's pretty accessible this game. And that's where you're going to see a lot of these pass concepts run to. They're going to be throwing on who's stepping up for Dean.
Oren
What's his?
Burks.
Yeah. Burks is going to be heavily targeted. And it's likely not going to be a game changer because of how methodical the Eagles offense is going to most likely be able to just move the ball, run pass their way into 80-yard touchdown drives. But I do think that being more of a factor than we would anticipate, as well as a extra winning the turnover battle. Maybe Hurts throws a untimely interception, and they were that game against Saquon. There were some, I think it was two like 70-yard runs or something, and like I guess if you get rid of those, that they the efficiency was good, but not great. It's not like they were 8 to 10 yarding them all game long, which at that point that would just if you're overwhelmed like that, it's tough to see improvement in the future there because that's just a mismatch thing and not a really a scheme thing. But if they can limit those big plays, attack the middle, and get some turnovers, that's how they do it. But I agree, it's a slim chance.
That's the formula that the Rams have to adopt. I think they have to be ultra aggressive on defense, and the the territory that I'm getting into with the Eagles now is I think that Jalen Hurts really doesn't have to play great for them to win a Super Bowl. he
Yeah.
can kind of like coast and manage the game into, and that can be enough for the Eagles to go all the way unless a defense forces their hand. And that's going to be the most interesting thing to monitor with the Eagles is, will a defense be able to stop the run, force Hurts into 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 situations, and how will he react to that? How will
Yep.
he react to multiple blitz looks, getting free rushers? Because it's one thing to blitz, but it's another thing to get a free rusher. Because a lot, like last week when the Eagles played the Packers blitz in moments, but the Eagles were always able to pick it up perfectly, and Hurts still had
Yeah.
time even when he was blitzed. So that, I think that's the number one thing that you have to look for when you playing the Eagles is, how can we get to Jalen Hurts? How can we make him uncomfortable? How can we force him to bail the pockets? How can we, do all these things to make him beat us in this game? Because that is the formula, I think, to beat the Eagles this year is we have to try to force Jalen Hurts to beat us with his arm. Because if you don't do that, there's just no chance you're going to beat this team.
Yeah. Agreed.
Next game, Commanders versus Lions. This is one of those that I'm monitoring for a potential upset. But I just think the Lions' defensive scheme has been too good recently. Even with the injuries, the Vikings game is probably elevated a lot in my mind, and maybe I shouldn't hold it in that high regard given how the Rams just did them. But I think the Commanders can keep this close, but I think the Lions will be able to get one or two stops, and I think they'll be able to score almost on every single one of their possessions and dominate time of possession. I got the Lions in this one.
Yeah, same here. I think that this has very high potential for a shootout, and I think a score like a 38-28 is probably the type of score we'll see, where the Lions punt maybe once all game, and the Commanders have to punt 2 or 3 times. Whoever punts more is probably going to lose. Neither team is neither team is really a turnover machine, and Goff can be at times, and I guess that's kind of the hope for the Commanders. But then they've also got probably the worst remaining defense. You could argue the Rams, although the Rams coming off this performance, they're coming off. I think that would position them just a little bit over the Commanders defense right now. But yeah, I mean, you're hoping Jayden Daniels just plays a phenomenal game, and the offense is unstoppable, and that you stop the Lions a couple of times. And yeah, the Lions in the regular season were EPA regular season doesn't really mean much because of all the injuries they have now, but fourth in EPA coverage, 17th against the run. Um, Commanders aren't great at running the ball, so I don't think that they're really going to be able to take advantage of that. But yeah, I mean, Jayden can run it, but Brian Robinson, and when they actually scheme up like inside zone looks with him, they feel like burnt plays for the most part. But yeah, I thought I was onto something with the shootout. I went to place a bet, and Vegas's odds were at 55.5 over under for points in this game, so they were ahead of
Wow.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, 55.5. So that's what, an average of 27
Yeah.
points for each team. Okay, I think
Yep.
that's doable. It's
Mm-hmm.
doable. So sometimes these playoff games are weird. Like you think it's going to be a shootout, and then it's like 17-13.
Yeah. Yeah. No, playoff games can go off script very quickly.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Jayden Daniels plays in this one. If he can pull out off an upset, that would be great. I think the Commanders have been a great story this year, and
Mm-hmm.
I think Terry McLaurin has a chance to have a big game. Going to be against Terrion Arnold or Amik Robertson on the outside. I think McLaurin and Jayden, if they can find that connection, he can go off for a big time day. But we
Yeah.
definitely got to see.
Yeah, and if Jayden goes to if he wins again, 2 playoff wins in his rookie season, I mean, like that, the topics next week are going to be crazy.
Yeah, that's gonna be insane. Next game, Texans versus Chiefs. This is another one where I'm just like going with the Chiefs. I don't think the Chargers defense really challenged the Texans as much as I thought they would. The
Yeah,
Chiefs are. I mean, they're gonna blitz CJ Stroud like hell. Stroud this year is
he didn't
24th
play
out
very
of,
well either.
yeah, he's 24th out of 35 quarterbacks against the blitz this year. The Chiefs love to send 5 or more players pressuring all the time. And Jalen Watson, getting him back is going to be huge. And they have Trent McDuffie, who they can just put on Nico Collins, and it's not going to shut
Hmm.
him down because Nico's Nico. But you can double team Nico Collins, and you can also play one on one against these other receivers that the Texans have. They don't have much threats. They don't have a run game. I think the Texans are going to lose this one. Their defense was able to be elite against a Chargers offense that has little to nothing. I don't think that'll be the case this time around against the Chiefs.
Yeah, coming in before Wild Card Week, I was looking at Deontay Johnson on this roster, and I was like, I don't think he's going to play a lot against the Chargers. But he's got like this game, this Texans at Kansas City game. This is where I think you would have seen Deontay really get on the field and get some real reps because you need it. And I mean, he cut again, claimed by the Ravens. Shockingly, that was bizarre.
They're trying to get a
Um,
comp pick.
yeah, I guess so. But yeah, like your Stroud was not very good against the Chargers. He coasted to a victory. He was inaccurate. He had some brutal interceptions. But I think the Texans D matches up well on paper with Kansas City, but we're not. Kansas City has a plethora of pass catchers now. I think that you can shoe in a few big Hollywood Brown plays in a Chiefs playoff run. Those are going to happen. Xavier Worthy's going to get some chunk gains. Kelsey's over the middle. Hopkins is going to have some tough third down conversions. I think this is another one where Kansas City's going to win. I think we're going to have an upset this week, but I'm not confident in any of them. I'm like, okay, just give me one, but I have no idea who that's going to be.
Yeah, like the one that I think is most possible to happen is probably the Rams against the Eagles, but it's gonna
Hmm.
snow in that game. And
Yeah.
yeah, Stafford last time in bad weather looked terrible. So I
Snow
think,
plays to the
yeah,
Eagles' strengths. Yeah.
the one for me is like the Commanders and Lions. I think that could be the one, but I don't have the guts to pick it. But
Yeah.
maybe it's the Ravens versus the Bills. The Bills are
Yeah.
underdogs in this game. Um,
Barely, though.
all year long, you have been saying
Yeah.
Bills, 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 Bills. Do you have the Bills winning this game?
I do. I actually have money on that too. I think that when you match them up, the Bills play at home. Josh Allen is smoking hot right now. I love Joe Brady's scheme. Obviously, the Ravens look excellent as well. Their defense has really, really tightened up lately. But one thing, looking at the Bills' defense, they have been leaky in coverage all season, but they were fourth in EPA against the run in the regular season. They did show up against the run. And if they can limit Henry, if they can spy Lamar, and you're not really going to contain Lamar at all, but this is probably going to be a shootout as well. But if they can limit Henry and force Lamar to be Jesus out there, they might have a chance because I think their offense is going to be more balanced. Joe Brady, I just have the most confidence in. I think that he would be my behind Ben Johnson. I think he's the second best head coaching candidate out there, and he's not getting a ton of noise either. I think I've seen him like once or twice on the interview list, but not a lot of buzz. I do think the Bills win. I think it's close. Could go either way, but yeah, I think Josh Allen. I think we get that Josh Allen Mahomes playoff rematch once again, and those are always fun.
That would be awesome. And it's weird because I think the Bills don't match up very well with the Ravens, in my opinion. They're weak up front. They're lighter up front, I
Yeah.
should say. They're
Hmm.
going to have five defensive backs on the field all the time. They're going to play nickel. They're going to play dime. And the Ravens are going to go out there in 12 personnel. They're going to try to just beat them up. And
Yeah.
they were able to do it when they matched up this season. But I think the Bills match up really well against the Chiefs. That's where
Yeah.
I feel like if they can get the Chiefs, that's a better draw for them. But obviously they're playing the Ravens already. They have the home field advantage, and we know how good the Buffalo Bills crowd is. I just feel like the Ravens, it's like which version of them is going to show up because the Ravens, at their absolute best, I think they can beat anybody in the NFL, but they're always susceptible to one of those weird games where Justin
Hmm.
Tucker misses like two field goals and he's not himself, and maybe somebody fumbles and it flips the field for them, and now they kind of get into playing from behind mode, and they're not usually the best when they do that. So that's kind of where I want to see how the Ravens come out in this one. Like the first loss they had to the Steelers this year, like Derrick Henry fumbles and then it just flips the
Yeah.
field and it just ruins their entire offensive rhythm. So I'm
Hmm.
looking for the Ravens to just find a more consistent rhythm, but I think they match up really well. Josh Allen, he scrambles a lot out the pocket and he gets
Hmm.
positive plays with his legs, but the Ravens are the best team at blanketing those routes down the field on those scrambles, and they contain quarterbacks really well on those scrambles. So where the first matchup, Josh Allen had 5 carries for 21 yards. He wasn't that effective, and he always had somebody in his face. I think Joe Brady's going to do a really good job designing a game plan. I want to see if the Bills are going to be able to run the ball because the Ravens also had an elite run defense this past season. So it's just going to be about, what can you take away? And the Bills in their first matchup, they really weren't able to take anything away, but because of the Zay Flowers injury, it allows them to play more aggressive this time around. They can
Yeah.
stack the line, they can stack the box more. And the Ravens have been running into that look all year long. So maybe it doesn't make much of a difference, but having those bigger bodies there and saying, okay, listen, if Rashad Bateman has to beat me, even though he's been good, he has to beat me. If Nelson
Yep.
Aguilar has to beat me, he's going to beat me. But I think the Bills are going to play really aggressive in this game and try to force Lamar into turnovers, and they're going to go all out in stopping the run. And I think we're going to see that immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's got potential to go either way. I think that week 4 was a long time ago. I think the Bills have more weapons now. I think that they're more settled into Joe Brady's scheme, and I, yeah, Keon Coleman too. I feel like we're gonna get a big game at some point from him in playoffs. But um,
But don't sleep on the
yeah,
Ravens corners. Marlon
yeah,
Humphrey playing in the slot now. Nate Wiggins has been
yeah.
fantastic for them.
Kyle Hamilton. Yeah, no, they're a good unit. They are good at plastering, but plastering in terms of cover, I'm referring to when Josh Allen scrambles and receivers start scrambling with the quarterback. There is no better thrower other than maybe Mahomes at making those throws. Although Josh Allen has been better this year, uh, at throwing players open while he's on the run, and
Yeah.
the tight windows that he can fit throws across his body into 40, 50 yards downfield. I detailed that in my arm talent video that was posted 2 months ago or so. But some of the just the windows he can create with that arm and that arm talent is just incredible. And yeah, I think we'll get some of that.
I got the Ravens in this game. I think they're
Okay.
going to be able to run the ball.
Yeah.
I think Lamar has a really good game. I trust this defensive turnaround. Since week 11, they have been one of the very best defenses in the NFL. I just trust what the Ravens have going on. And maybe I'm going to be wrong about it because, the Ravens can always have a stinker. But I think this is going to be a great matchup. And I know that there's going to be toxic discourse around whoever loses this game. But if they both play well, I really don't think there should be. I feel like
Hmm.
oftentimes we kind of make like quarterback wins head to head matter more than it should.
Yeah, yeah. It's all talk. It's for the
Yeah.
hype.
It's like,
But
one is facing a better defense, pass rush, and it's like, oh yeah, but
yeah,
he beat this guy. Yeah.
this could be an AFC championship game, and it might come down to just look inches once again, like as games always do, and then uh, so maybe James Cook fumbles twice, or James Cook fumbles and there's a muff punt, but Josh Allen loses by a touchdown, and now Josh Allen lost because he's not good enough, and that's the narrative, which is just yeah, I don't buy into that.
So rapid fire NFL divisional round playoff predictions. First game up, the Commanders and Lions.
Lions, I'll say I think they win by 10 points.
I got the Lions winning in this game. I think it's going to be a shootout. Rams versus Eagles.
I've got Eagles, I'll say by like 8 or 9 points.
I got the Eagles. I think they're going to dominate, especially in bad increment weather. I don't think the Rams match up well with them at all. Texans versus Chiefs.
Chiefs, I'll say by 7.
I got the Chiefs winning this game as well. I think they're going to have control of it throughout most of it. In the game of the week, the
Yep.
Ravens versus the Bills.
Yep. Well, I've got the Bills. I'll take them by 3.
I'm going to go with the Ravens here. I think Lamar Jackson is heading to the AFC Championship for some potential revenge against Patrick Mahomes. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Weekly Blitz. Thank you guys for listening and or watching. We'll be back after the divisional round playoffs to recap that and give our predictions for the championship games. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.